Isn't this what human design gives us? It gives us the capacity to detach, watch, and the seeing it sort of makes it go away. I like
Mhm.
to say seeing it kills it, you know. It's
Yeah.
and so you can detach and then you start to look at the thing as if it's not fully you, even though it's you. You say, oh, I feel this, but I'm also looking at it. And that's when people start to get that first clue. I always thought that there is something different. There is, it's as if you get to see, oh my God, I am a personality consciousness watching something else that apparently is conscious and apparently is my life partner at
Mhm.
the same time. So this whole thing's amazing. Is there anything particular that was in your chart that you would have wanted to know, or just things that, like those fanciful things that's either fun to talk about or not before I just sort of, because we got to give the audience the rundown as well.
Yeah.
Instead of just diving into if it's just me and you on a phone call, we would just start in
Mhm.
some place abstract, but um, logically abstract,
Yeah.
I would say.
With my undefined G center, I love just hearing different interpretations of like what people see when like how do you see me? Who do you see me as? What stands out to you in the chart? I think that's always a
And no
fun
totally open
question.
centers. I
Yeah.
like this. No totally open centers and tons of 34 going on. So, um, uh, the methods of magic, and I added to that I wrote right-minded methods of. So what we're looking at here is the chart of the energy type is a manifesting generator. I'm a manifesting generator. I got some of the same definition, and we're busy. We're busy. We can't always be really reached really well. The generator is designed to simply wait and respond. I always put it as it's like the generator responds and follows. And at the end of the dance, no one dances more steps, no one has more fun, no one listens to more or less music. They both finish at the same time, start at the same time. So what's the real difference to just say, hey, like the dog or the Buddha on the side of the river, I wait. I wait. And so this is a hard thing. Can you speak a little bit to what it was like learning to wait to respond? It's hard for manifesting generators. I found it later in life than you. How old are you right now? I'm almost
27.
okay. I'm approaching. I'll be turning 59 in a month, a little over a month, and so I started later in life. So I'm going to assume that made it harder on me, with all that manifestor conditioning. But do you remember your first times trying to stop and reorient yourself into a responsive nature?
Yeah, I was in college when I was first really experimenting with human design, and I had it in my head of just this conditioned belief of if you want something done, you have to do it yourself. And
Mhm.
so I had this very like I was trying to become more decisive. I remember getting a book called like How to Be Decisive or something like that. And so I thought if I was able to just make snap decisions quicker, I would move forward faster. And so I was like really forcing things. I was just
None of it felt
pushing.
good, did it?
Yeah, it didn't
It
feel
only
good.
felt good in little moments when your mind caught on to the dream of what could be, and then you'd
Yeah,
roll up your sleeves and your ego would tell you, "Yes, you can," and then a few minutes later, you'd be like, "I don't know if I like this," you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Right.
So,
So,
but yeah,
ep
actively waiting. Specifically, I really wanted to be a tutor in the anatomy lab in college. And so I remember thinking, oh, well, if I want the position, I need to email the professor and let him know. And like, I know that I meet the qualifications. But instead, I said, I'm not going to, I'm going to wait. And that was a very like active practice of I waited and I waited and I had all of my friends because I was teaching it to everyone. I was already tutoring everyone at my table and I was already in that role, but I really wanted to be a tutor in like future semesters. And so I waited and waited and waited. And everyone said, like, oh, you should apply for that. Like, you should ask if he's thinking about you for this position. I said, yeah, I'm waiting. I'm waiting. He'll come to me. I know he will. And he pulled me aside after one of the days and said, hey, like, would you be interested in this? Because you would be a great candidate for this position. And I said, yes, I would love it. So
that's so
instead of
funny.
initiating, it was like 2 or 3 days that I had to sit and wait.
It was, in my college, I went to Berkeley in Boston studying music and film scoring, and my tutor job as a tutor, music tutor in the learning lab, we called it, It was the same. It was a similar dumb luck thing. I didn't have to wait. I was just sort of in the right place at the right time. And people started talking. And the next thing I know, in response, I just said all the right things because they were there already.
Yeah.
Having had a previous degree helped. And so I already knew that that was a little badge in my corner. So I just leaned in and bam, got the job. That I didn't know I needed a job. I bumped into a thing. And the next thing I know, I have a job. And I
Perfect.
used to just call this dumb luck, like straight up dumb luck. And I love the term dumb luck because it's sort of cute sounding, but it's not quite dumb luck. It's
Mhm.
not. It was an alignment to a strategy and authority I didn't know I had. 'Cause this was a long time ago in the 90s. Hadn't been introduced yet. So yeah, that's amazing. I love that. So when we get into this type, this energy type itself, and the strategy that goes along with it, I always like to describe to people the strategy of responding is literally like you have an analogy. And so I'm going to give my analogy. It's a guy's analogy. Picture it like a screw, and the instructions say screw the screw into the thing until it's snug, and then back it off one half turn. Anyone can follow that instruction, guy or girl. It doesn't matter, obviously. Let's say it's a simple thing. Back it off half a turn. You're a generator. You've been out front manifesting, screwed in real tight. You know, back it off half turn. You've got to step back and allow the life that you're about to respond to happen, or else you're going to keep missing your truth. You're going to keep trying to initiate, and that manifestor conditioning will stay, and then our open centers will torture us. So,
Mhm.
how about you? The strategy? You have an
Yeah.
analogy?
I found that waiting is a shortcut. And so I, just a fun thing that I tell people is sometimes we wait because we're so excited that we have to, like, we got there early and we just have to wait for the event to get there. We have to wait for everyone else to catch up. So we're waiting. I also talk about it like generators and manifesting generators, when they're in it, they really like to be in it and they don't like to be interrupted. And so it's almost like waiting until, especially as a manifesting generator, it's really waiting until that battery is all the way full so that you can use it all that you want. So it's almost like a slingshot or a bow and arrow. So it's like waiting, 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 waiting. But the longer you wait, it's like the more momentum, the more speed you're gaining. And so you'll actually get there faster and you gain
Indeed.
clarity along the way. And yeah, that's how I
Indeed.
typically
So
talk
the
about it.
signature that comes along with all of this, um, I've found that the aura and the signature, they really go hand in hand. So the generator's aura, for anyone who doesn't know, every human body has this aura that extends out, up to 4 and 5 feet in all directions, or at least 3 arms length anyway, sometimes more. And the aura does things. It repels resistance. It acts as a buffer so someone can sample. It penetrates the other so that it can come to know and help guide and direct. And then for us, it's just open and enveloping. I like to refer to generators as dumb generators. We don't know. We're open if the stuff comes to us. I don't. How am I supposed to know? I'm not a fortune teller. You know, would be what I would always say. And I run a business, a mortgage business, and people would say, "What's your business plan?" And I'm going to wait to respond, and they would yell at me, "That's no business plan." I would hear all these things, and I'd be like, "Well, let's see. 20 some odd, almost 7 years later, 20 something years later, there she blows. I'm probably going to move on
Mhm.
from this, but that's only because it's time. But
Yeah.
yep. So this signature that comes along with this aura, open, enveloping, people come into it, things come into it. I always tell a generator, if you start waiting to respond, literally watching yourself wait and take that initial dog on a chain, reaction that we have so often, and just wait for a few moments. Generators don't have to wait long. We never have to
Mhm.
wait long. There's going to be a sound somewhere. A thought's going to come through. We respond to our own thoughts. That's a perfect place to respond to because it's not our fault if a thought came in. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It's something new, and we get to respond to it. Um, we may find that it's still not for us, but that's for us to find out, is the
Mhm.
thing. And it goes so much with this signature of satisfaction and the not self theme of frustration. I found that satisfaction is this glorious place. I find it, we get to call satisfaction a place of happiness. Because when we're actually satisfied, we're happy, like the 4-year old.
Mhm.
So I've always told people, you really want to get in touch with what the truth is, get back to your 4-year old self. because it's never wrong, ever. I mean, as an archetype, it's never wrong, is what I've always said. If the 4-year-old doesn't like it, that's true. If the 4-year-old can't stop, that's true. If the 4-year-old wants to pee its pants, that's true. It's that I'm just saying that's how it is. And so satisfaction becomes this wicked happy place. Satisfaction sounds like, oh no, I'm satisfied. That was pretty good. No, it's so much more exalted than that. What do you read into satisfaction when you see it as a signature?
I have found that satisfaction isn't necessarily instant gratification. It doesn't necessarily come from things being easy. It can
Mm-mm.
come from overcoming a hard challenge. And it's probably because gate 34 is the way that my sacral energy expresses. But yeah, I think that there's so much more satisfaction in like looking back at my certification program and seeing I created over 400 training programs in that. Was it tiring at times? Yes. But looking back and seeing like, wow, I did a lot. I did something I'm very proud of. I created something very intentionally, very detail oriented and beautiful. Like I really am proud of all of the little details. And it's, yeah, it's something like that where it's almost like it has this glow, this magic.
It's got
And
a glow to it.
frustration, yeah,
Yeah,
frustration to me feels like you're trying to build a sandcastle with no water. And so
right,
you're like filling up a bucket of sand and you're dumping it over, and then you're like, why is it not staying up?
right,
And you're
right.
trying to just like shape it. It's like you're pouring energy in because that's what generators do. So we pour life force energy into things, and disset or frustration says, I'm pouring energy in and it's not changing. Nothing's working. It's not growing the way that it should grow. And then satisfaction says, I'm putting energy in and it's giving me so much back at the same time. It's turning out better than I could have expected.
Can't even
And
stop.
so,
You can't even
yeah,
stop.
yeah.
Right, right. That's the kid. The kid is why would the kid stop? I know when the kid stops when his face is facing down in the carpet and drool is coming out of his mouth because he's asleep. You know, that's that good generator is what I always like to say it, good generator. I find that this frustration part, especially in a manifesting generator, because the 3420 is the archetype of the manifesting generator and it comes with its share of anger and like
Mhm.
sudden outbursts even of like almost rage. It's like this energy that's willing to launch the TV out of the second floor window. That's it, you're gone, boom, and still regret it. It's like, I need that dang TV. I'm so pissed at myself for doing that, or whatever the thing is. um so I've destroyed my share of things in life inside of that frustration, inside of that place. And I remember being in my own head saying, I don't know what's driving this, but I couldn't
Mm.
feel the release of that energy until I smashed the thing, wrecked the thing, whatever it was, crashed through the thing, ran away because I'm a 2-4. So I found it goes to anger and it can even turn into like rage, but it just doesn't stay. Now, it might be different with you a little bit because of the emotional wave has to come to clarity. So I imagine at times that rage could actually stick around for a few hours or a day with that ego
Yeah.
power. Mine couldn't stick around for very long. It just couldn't. Even 10 minutes later, the same person I was so mad at might come to the door. So I'd see them and I just wouldn't want to be. It's just, I already spent that energy already, and I would let it go. Is it different with this ego, for you
It
with this?
comes in waves for me where things like I'll be initially really angry. And I think being an athlete growing up really, really helped because I was always so physically active and that was always a great outlet. Like if I was really mad, we always started with running and conditioning. So
Yeah,
I was working out and that was helpful. And if you're
me
angry,
too.
vault is great. You're running full speed ahead of a stationary object and hitting it as hard as you can. So it was a great way to physically move a lot of that energy. And even now, like when things start to tick me off and I start to get angry, working out is typically one of the first things I'll try to just give my space time, to give my body time to move that energy. Because until I've regulated those emotions, I'm not going to find clarity. And so doing the I shouldn't be feeling angry or judging myself for the feeling
Doesn't really.
makes it just keeps it in the emotional vortex and it just comes back in waves and waves and waves. So it can be 3 months later and I'm like, I'm still mad at that person and I don't want to talk to them. It's like, okay, maybe instead of torturing yourself with this perpetual, like, because I'm not feeling good if I'm constantly mad. I'm torturing myself in that moment. I'm in pain if I'm constantly mad. And so I'm saying, okay, is this actually worth it? Or is that teeny tiny, slightly uncomfortable conversation that I think I need to have going to actually lead to a lot more peace? So yeah, it boils. I've always called it like fury, and I tend to self-isolate very quickly. Like that gate 40.2 is like my go-to strategy when
Oh,
emotions are
yeah,
high. I
I
isolate
see that.
very intensely. Also as an observed or an observer environment style. So yeah, I when those emotions are high, I tend to just whoosh, hermit shell ghost people. You won't talk to me while I go through my flurry and I journal about how mad I am at you and say all of the profane things that I need to say.
Right,
And then I
right.
burn that piece of paper and come back to you with an emotionally regulated response.
A well-regulated, knowing, awake, manifesting generator with a 3420. It's happening so fast, and then it just helps sort of get gone and go away. I'm so excited. I'm following Moni's format here. I've never quite done it this way, but it actually feels good. Freaking projectors always guiding me. God, gosh darn it. So this
Isn't
whole
it
we
frustrating
dealt
when
with
they're
this.
right?
Say it again.
Isn't it frustrating when they're right?
I know about being it's so funny. So this whole profile thing, we deal with the not self. Let's just finish up with the not self. This not self is ubiquitous in our world. Come into the human design experiment and you'll start to see for yourself that this sense of frustration that for me it was my 10 speed. I would get on my 10 speed, next thing I know I'd be 30 miles from home, just pounding away until finally my legs would give out like rubber bands
Hmm.
and then I couldn't think about what I was mad about anymore. And it was so understand in a generator, this frustration, it needs to be worked through. When you see it in your children, find something that they like to do that makes them have to like move that energy hard. Tressa, I love Tressa. She's one of my dearest friends. Been a student for a long time, and now she's just a little master herself. I begged her. I was like, get some harnesses and attach a sleigh to this child and to these children, and it's time to pull you around for a little while.
Yeah.
Not that they want to do that, but God forbid they want to do that. Now you're all set, because that energy is going to turn into fatigue and then they're going to be tired and it's all gone. So I can't overstress. Working physical energy through your body at times of frustration is literally so key, along with the rest of this experiment. Um, this profile, so you're not in the six line phase yet, but you've read so much about it. You must be forecasting what it is. You're forecasting the roof. You're
I
forecasting this
am.
development. What's that like? Because most people don't get a chance to really be where you are.
It's interesting. So my Saturn return is scheduled to like officially start
Scheduled. I love that.
June of next year.
Yep.
But from what I've heard, usually a couple years before you start to inch your way up in that
Hmm.
direction.
Yep.
And as soon as I turned 25, it was like this. I could like feel it. I don't know. It just became this like presence of like this the Saturn return as a thing. And I felt the like resilience start to dwindle a little bit. When I first started my business, there was very much this I am going to do more than absolutely everybody and I'm going to work harder than everybody and I'm going to help everyone and it was just that third line resilience and
Hmm.
I've come to terms with, just time and time again. I'm like, actually, I don't want to do everything. And actually, I know I could run two different masterminds and a group thing here and a group thing there, but I don't want to do it all. So I've been noticing that like trial and error is starting to get tiring. And so it used to be, oh, okay, this didn't work. Awesome. I'll respond to it and I'll move into the next thing. So there is almost this like stillness that's been happening in my energy. And then I'm really interested to see just like how that Saturn return goes because it's in gate 25.3 consciously, which is in my undefined G center. And it's a third line on top of that. And then it starts like the day that Saturn enters Aries. So it's the longest possible Saturn return that you can possibly have.
Wow. Why'd you
So,
say 25's in your unconscious? Isn't it on your
or
conscious side? Did I
conscious,
miss? Okay.
undefined
Yep.
G center.
Undefined. Okay.
Sorry.
Yep. All good.
Yeah, unconsciously it's 17.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
Okay. Oh,
yeah,
and it's in the it's beyond the law. It's with Saturn, who will cause problems if when you disobey her. You know what I mean? When
yeah,
it's more than the judge in a way. It is the judge in a way. Um, so that's amazing. So this is
mhm,
so but 25 is this profile, the 6-2 profile, the hermit. And I love it. The nihilist, that's Ra's line, 42. You know, you're not going to get anywhere near me until I am called, and then I'll be all over you like white on rice, essentially. Um, have you been confused by this calling, or did the generator in you just constantly recognize it was happy and didn't really think about it too much? Or did you see the serendipity and the innocence of this
mhm.
calling that would just keep showing up? And if you answer the call and you're a generator as a response, you're going the right way. You're moving in the right direction. Um,
Yeah. With that undefined G center, there can sometimes be this theme of, is this my dream? Like, is this my purpose? Or did I just watch a whole bunch of other people do something similar and I think this is the best direction? So sometimes there can be like a little bit of just questioning of, who am I? Is this actually meant for me? Am I headed in the right direction? But it lasts a few minutes and then I'm able to move
right.
through it. Um, the way human design found me was a very serendipitous and just like a very spiritual experience where it showed up over and over again through just different people sharing it. And I pulled up my chart and I was like, no, that's too confusing. But then there was this glitch in a psychology lecture on a PowerPoint, and the words human design were next to each other. And so it was like a very it felt like the universe was like, no, you have to go in this direction. And then everything started changing so quickly as soon as I did start saying yes to it. And I really started surrendering to the lessons. So there has always been this like, no, I'm really meant for this. This is definitely a big part of my story. And just seeing the ripple effect of me starting to talk about it online in 2019 to seeing where this community has grown to now has been just so reaffirming as well. So yeah,
Ra,
sometimes that insecurity comes in.
Ra Uruhu in the beginning made it a presumption that this, by the time humanity is as awake as it's going to get, that human design may have reached up to 1% of the population or two. He had some low numbers. For his forecasting was a little bit sad sounding. If you had to forecast, what would you think is going to take place over the next 5 or 6 years as it relates to,
Mm,
because this stuff is starting to take off. It's hard to say, nah. I mean, there's a lot of readers now.
yeah,
Yep.
I've certified several.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Um, yeah, with that gate 17, that farsightedness, I
Three
do.
separate times, right?
Yeah, three times, both of my north nodes and that unconscious Jupiter. So that's a lot of time is spent in looking at the patterns and thinking about how it's going to play out in the future. So Gen Z has Pluto in Sagittarius. And so what Generation Z is really here to transform is our relationship to work, and our relationship to Sagittarius is also about like play, and it starts with gate 34, like you can see in my Pluto placements, which is about personal power. And then
Mhm.
we also have 2027 coming up where we're going to have some emotional mutations. And we're already seeing a rise in this. So, a big part of the changes that are going to happen is that the emotional center is going to go from being a motor center to just an awareness center. And that is a really, really big deal collectively because we are far too emotionally reactive for the world that we live in. Emotional reactivity was amazing when it kept us alive when we were running away from predators. Now we have emergency life or death saving levels of emotion in response to angry emails, comments that are left on our
Right,
Instagram feeds. It's
right.
it's out of
It's
balance. There's
proportional,
that.
man. It's
There's
totally
that
out of
word
balance.
for it. Yeah, my
Yeah.
Tourette's moment of the stutter. Yeah. So what's going to happen with the emotional center is it's shifting to being just emotional like intelligence without that emotional
But it
reactivity.
still needs its clarity process.
It does.
And it still will have its motorized function for the next 30 years as we will
Yeah.
be the predominant people on the planet, but the next
Yeah.
50, 60 years, really,
Hmm.
until it's offset by the new children that are coming in. And
Yeah.
I don't know that it was totally, I don't know that Ra was able to actually pinpoint for sure that there aren't people that will still have certain emotional attachments and connections
Mhm.
that don't have anything to do with gate 49 and 19, splitting off from each other. So, and the whole changing of this basically stream of awareness into that autic circuit. So I am curious to find out what happens and to really interview people later, 10 years from now,
Mhm.
about this process and what's been going. I can't wait to see what
Yeah.
happens, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But
have
we're really
noticed,
ready for it. And I mean,
I
we're
hope so.
seeing the
Yeah.
rise of right now we're seeing a lot of people present with autism and ADHD and neurodivergency. And so we're already having this rise of individuality come up where people are curious about themselves. And a major thing that the millennial generation has done is destigmatize mental health. Now it's common for me to scroll through TikTok and see a video that says, "Today, my therapist told me," and goes into this really personal, very vulnerable, life changing piece of advice. Versus when I was growing up, we didn't talk about mental health. We didn't talk about feeling sad. We didn't talk about things like that. So that has already drastically changed the conversation to where we're more compassionate, we're more trauma informed, we're more aware of how other people feel. And we're also going to have to realize that we will not agree with everybody. That fear of rejection is very primal. It's really written into our DNA. And
Mhm.
as humans, we have never been more connected. And so a couple hundred years ago, it made sense to have a fear of abandonment and rejection because you only had the people in your town, the people in your city, the family that you knew.
Abandonment could mean death,
Yeah,
potentially.
abandonment meant death if you didn't
Or
have
could,
that
yeah.
tribe. But today, we are in contact with so many people through the internet. We are globally connected. And with a planet being globally connected, there is absolutely no way that there is even probably a single topic that every single one of the humans on the planet agrees with. And so that fear of rejection is inevitable. It's not something that we can be feeling like we're going to be like our life is threatened if we're being rejected. And like that's where the nervous system dysregulation is happening. You get a mean comment, your primal body says, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna die because this person doesn't agree with me." And then you're reacting out of like an emotional heightenedness. So yeah, we're seeing the intelligence, we're seeing the interest in the nervous system regulation, energetics, astrology, human design. And so I see it coming up for a reason at this time. And like the next generations are really interested in this. And so as we continue to see more people gain interest in it, I'd love to see it integrated in more. What I dislike, and this is coming from a medical background, is that a diagnosis tends to be like the end game
Right.
in the psychological world.
Yep.
And so if you're just going for, okay, you've been diagnosed with PTSD, you've been diagnosed with complex trauma, you've been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, then it just becomes this excuse and this identity. And it just perpetuates this story. When we look at human design, those are symptoms. Those are symptoms, and it's just like a small energetic shift. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's something deeply wrong with who you are. And of course,
One step
I
further.
believe in intuitive choice. So if medication is the correct path for you, that is absolutely the correct path for you. I have a lot of ADHD and autism symptoms, and human
You're
design has
loaded with
allowed
them.
me
Look at you, you
to,
little freak. That's what you
yeah,
are. Me too. We love it. I love it. Yeah, more. Sprinkle it
Yeah.
harder. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's like my human design has just been able to explain all of it. Like I have all of those arrows pointing to the right. My brain is very passive and very, like, I'm very right-brained. I'm a
me
triple
too. Yeah.
split, so I jump all over the place. As a manifesting generator, I can't even think in a straight line sometimes, let alone
Squirrel.
function or like plan my day in a straight line.
Yeah, I
And
got one word for it. I call it
work.
squirrel.
Yeah.
Squirrel. Yeah.
I
Choo,
call it
choo.
tinkering. Yeah, my job, like I just tinker instead of writing to-do lists. I've literally started writing, I just keep track of like what I tinkered with that day. And it's
Right.
been so powerful to see like, okay, this inspired me to jump over here, which inspired me to jump over here. And it's like you can track your attention and
Right. You know what? I
see
ought
the
to give
thread
that
of
a
where you
try.
went. Yeah, it's fun.
Even in your pre-Saturn stage where you're approaching your Saturn return, the left angle still is left angle. It still is even in the right angle phase. I don't know we can fully call that a right angle phase. We can call it a 3-2 phase.
Yeah.
We can point out all the right angle qualities, which is our qualities of youth anyways, have to. So this whole definition thing, and as we get into this definition, we'll look at centers and undefined centers real quick. So when we look at your definition, it makes a triple split. Have you noticed in your triple splitness that you have to be out in the world sometimes, even when the hermit in you says, I don't want to go anywhere? What happens in
Yeah.
those moments? Because that's an interesting combination. If you're a
I
3-5 triple split, no sweat. Of course, you're going to go out and bounce on things. You know what I mean? But go ahead.
Yeah, it's almost like I get restless in my own house,
Hmm.
where especially working from home. But usually it'll start in the morning where it's like I can't find a comfortable place to journal. And if I just can't figure out like where do I want to sit to journal? How do I want to like if I want to be up here, if I want to be downstairs, if I can't find a comfortable place, I'll typically go to a coffee shop. And so at that point, it's really just like, okay, I know I need to leave the house. I need to go to a coffee shop. And then I'll just allow myself to just intuitively drive wherever. So I get to like the end of my neighborhood. I'm like, okay, am I going left or am I going right? And I'll kind of feel it through. Like, I feel like I need to just like get somewhere right now, or I need to drive for a little while, and then I can move into like where I need to go next. But yeah, I sometimes
Have you
just
noticed?
need to go to the store. I need to go to a bookstore or something.
Have you noticed that even driving in traffic does the deed?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
explains road rage in California, where the traffic is 4 and 5 and 6 lanes wide, bumper to bumper. That's a lot of aura. Of
it
course, there's going to
is.
be various forms of, road incident when people don't know because they're
Yeah.
unaware that they're being conditioned
Oh
a
yeah.
lot.
But I
Um,
love a good drive. Yeah, I used to, especially in nursing school, sometimes I'm like, I just need to drive. I'll just get on the highway and drive like half an hour and then turn around, drive back.
and
Going nowhere,
it wouldn't
just
have occurred
being
to you at the
everywhere.
time that every time you pass someone, every time you came to a light, you're washing through the auras, which is I
Mhm.
always call it tell third, triple a split definition, triple split definitions, look at it like a shower. You're taking an auric shower. Or look at it like the chiropractor, the good ones. When you're done and you hear clickety clickety crack and it feels so good, look at it like that. You're going out to get your adjustments, so to speak.
Mhm.
And so I always love that. But definition. So 1762, 2034. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the channels that are fully defined. We have 4 channels, 3740, channel of community, and then this channel of judgment, the design of insatiable design of finding things to make better, always filling up a well. So 3420 is where awareness must become deed. It's a design of a manifesting generator and it's designed to be quick, but it still must wait. And if every generator who had this definition, if they learned to wait and recognize the anger is not really theirs, it came from you not being aligned to your strategy and authority, they would start to recognize waiting's just not that big of a deal. As soon as we're in response, I've found manifesting generators, especially, turn into manifestors, powerful ones. But
Mhm.
but it's got a time limit. There's a timer on it. I don't know what the timer is. You'll know. You'll know when it's up. Really, that when the timer's up. wait and collect a new response, just like underdog had an underdog pill. I'm sort of dating myself with that reference, but um, right? What do you think of that? It's like of course you have to wait, but as soon as you're in response, what really is the difference between you and the manifester in that moment as it relates to doing?
Mm,
You're going to look forward. It's like now I need to go to the store because I need nails. Okay, that's still within the original response. If I can't wait to build my dog's doghouse, and you love it, and you're building, now you're going to go to the store 100 times, manifesting, because now you're doing. You really are doing the doing, but it has a time limit. As that
mhm.
doghouse project comes to a completion, so does the manifestation. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I have really played with manifesting generators as being almost a spectrum of that like manifestor to generator energy because you can have a manifesting generator who, let's say, has a connection between their sacral center to their throat center through the G center, so like an
Hmm.
indirect connection. And their response is going to show up a little bit differently than somebody who, let's say, has the 60 to 3 channel and then one of the emotional manifesting channels.
Mm.
And so I've really played with it as a spectrum, but with the 3420 being a manifesting generator channel, my only conscious channel, and then also my only channel in my sacral center. It's been really interesting to try
Only
and tease
activation in your
apart.
sacral.
Yeah,
That's wow. Yeah.
yeah, 3 times, but the only one.
Yep. I see that.
Yeah. So it's interesting because, people say manifesting generators or generators first, but my generator energy has always had this manifestor cycle because it is a manifesting generator channel. So I almost feel like mani gens go through longer phases, longer seasons than manifestors, and it's almost like a mini generator cycle. So it's almost like for this season of my business, I'm podcasting a lot or I'm writing a lot of books. And so it's almost like you're showing up in that season as a generator and generating and doing the things. But then that excitement starts to dwindle and it starts to wane. And so that's where almost this manifester energy comes in of like, okay, I have to finish this, or I mean, that's generator. You finish the you finish the pattern, you finish the cycle, and then you go into a rest phase. And a lot of manifesting generators feel like it's almost a plateau or it's burnout because the interest in, I feel like for manifestors, it's very clear, like this is the cycle and now we're done. And for manifesting generators, because that sacral is in the fix, it really is a fizzle. It's
It
this
is.
like
Is you gotta fizzle out.
slowly, yeah,
And the
it's a
fizzling out feels
fizzle.
slow. There's
It
melancholy in
does.
the fizzle, and we have to teach our people and ourselves when did we get the idea? I know when we got it because I had the idea that sadness is bad. Think of what we've done with this word sadness instead of
Mhm.
a creative state where glory and intelligence comes from. I always
Yeah.
tell people, "Oh, you're sad? Great. You're about to get smarter. Look at that. This is great. Just hang on. Hold on a minute. 4 p.m., you're going to be smart again." Um, isn't it true though? If you're sad,
It
it
is.
means you're on your way to new intelligence. So
Mhm.
sadness drives it. And when the fizzle happens, I've always noticed that the sadness feels so blue. I don't even know what's going to be next. I can't. The doghouse is done. I got band-aids on my fingers. The day's almost over. I'm not ready to go to sleep. Everything sort of is, you know. But then again,
Yeah.
I don't have a defined ego to get that reward of that. So it's like I don't even have that. It's like, and I just have to wait through it. My generator body is saying, no, my child, you will sustain at the next thing. I'm putting you right back to, I'm just saying, we generators are a slave to our energy. And if we disobey her, we are nothing but frustrated and we get sick. We get sick. And that's no good. And so Ra had said once, and I totally believe it, that illness essentially propagates out of the not self.
Mhm.
Now, cellularly, it then takes on all these things we can name and see and all this, but it still is given all this negative energy through the not self to disorganize and decombobulate in the first place. And so I just find that amazing. So I see in channels here, I see this channel of it's not openness. What is 1762? It's a recognition, right?
Community. Or
Huh?
1762 is.
why am I drawing a blank here?
It's
It's
not
it's
judge acceptance.
acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as it I've always found that name to be odd because
Mhm.
literally it's the 17 that it does the accepting of its place and the logical process. And the acceptance becomes this recognition because it's an intelligence, right? Coming out of 17 that to lead, one must follow. And to follow, one must lead. And it is this fellowship that takes place up there because to lead and to follow requires communion so you can follow the other and lead the others. And sometimes you're switching back and forth. And but then this channel can become it's not self would be I'm supposed to lead. I know I have all the right things. My opinion matters more than anything. Um, and that can come out as pompous at times. But the truth of the matter is, you go to 17 and 62 and you ask them for their opinion on something, because this really is opinions that come out. It's logical. It's looking into the future. It's dying to support Gate 7 and the Sphinx when the Sphinx comes around. And what's it doing? It's collecting all the details and drafting possible logical things, in your case, to solve mysteries and assuage confusion, right? It's like, oh, the mystery, oh, the thing, oh, it's coming back, oh, it's too loud, oh, I don't want all the sound. I'm keynoting the gates in your head center. Oh, it's confusing. Oh, I feel like it's oppression, but I don't got that gate. Oh, it's just too much. Oh, turn it off. Oh, I have the opinion. Oh, the details showed up. Oh, I'm on the move. Right? Is that sound about like your process sometimes that will
Yeah.
happen? Okay.
Yeah. It's very, I do see the 64 and the 62 work together. Um, it's interesting because they almost, I know they're not pairing partners, but they feel very different sometimes. With 61, it's very much like this just I just know this thing, and then eventually the details and the opinions to back that will show up in my world.
Yep.
And with 64, it feels like somebody dumped a bucket of Legos or puzzle pieces out like in my brain, and I'm just like, whoa, all of the bits and pieces of information are just like coming together, and it just feels like an abundance of inspiration. And so with that, I'm
Yeah,
like, okay,
abundance,
I just need to
you mean
sit.
too much. It feels like too
Yeah,
much
it
sometimes.
feels
Yeah.
like too much sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially
So
with 62 being so detailed, it's like taking in all of the inspiration and then funneling it down. So, yeah, it just takes time.
yeah, you have that twice as well. Look at that.
Mhm.
I have gate 12, line 4. I love this prophet. It's driven. Um, and then we've already talked in great deal about 3420. And so talk about the sharing process of 1762. So quietly it wants to share, vocally it becomes a gunslinger and it must share. And then quietly it starts to recognize, do I keep sharing? Because the energy will disorganize if the timing isn't right. So that would have been a process for you to learn.
Yeah, especially with it being my South nodes, it's definitely shown up in a lot of like lessons for me. It feels like that's my nerdy channel is in my brain. It's like that's my nerdy. I like the details. I want to put all the human design information in spreadsheets and write it down here and move it over here. So I love to organize information and put it in different ways. And my opinions, if they're not well thought through, I came across as being very argumentative as a child, even though I was just trying to understand the logic. And if I didn't understand it logically, it was hard for me to accept. And I would push boundaries in that way where I'm like, I don't accept that.
Well,
That's
you're designed to
that's not a
challenge.
logical answer. Yeah.
You would challenge those logic. So these two channels go together. I guess we're
Yeah.
saving the emotional channel for last. So 58 and 18. 58 is an insatiable joy. It's
Mhm.
called the gate of joy, and its insatiability is it wants to get on the move, coming out of the root center. So that's adrenalized energy, wanting to share with someone else the event that's about to get looked into. It wants deeply to find something to identify with. It's the rocket fuel for the entire logical process. And it's the only rocket fuel for the logical process. So that's why logic is always
Mhm.
starved for a little bit of extra energy. Um, does make me wonder what's going to happen when the emotional process slows down. That's funny.
Yeah.
But 18 is very challenging. And again, you got this twice, right? Is it three
Yeah.
times or twice?
Twice.
Have you counted up your activations and you got 18?
18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Hmm.
yeah, that starts as soon as you get down to 18 and 17, you start to be on the lower side of the average. I've always found I've seen one with as low as 14 activations. These people are very dense. They're compact amongst themselves somehow or other. I'm not sure what that is. I would love to just, check it out more. But this 18 that wants to challenge, you got it twice. They're in your nodes. Your nodes cause a direction. The storyline says I go from opinions to basically understanding where it's going to fit, meaning what to challenge and what's worth challenging. You know what I mean? And what purpose is this going to fulfill? And does this make me feel driven? Does this let me feel unstuck? I'm keynoting the gates in your root, because ultimately the things you care to correct are always trying to serve the individual. The collective serves the individual. The tribe
Hmm.
serves the individual because it's the individual expression that the consciousness program appears to be after. I mean, I've yet to find an exception to that. If you find one, let me know. So they're serving this and that ambition that wants to serve still. So sometimes for a purpose, once you're not stuck and you've accepted the limitation, you're not busting through that limitation. And here's this passion to come out and basically challenge an old way. Oh my God, what's that been like for you? Because it's an emotional process at the same time. So you've driven some people crazy.
Yeah.
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 You ever
Oh,
get yourself
yeah.
kicked out of places?
Actually,
Oh,
no.
not
I
so much that. Okay.
That gate 18 definitely showed up as like a fear of breaking rules. And then, yeah, it can show up as I know exactly how to follow rules and when to challenge. Like it
Same
was
here. Yeah.
more of like a held back, I don't know if I can do this, like building up the courage to was more of my journey than getting in trouble. I had brothers that got in a lot of trouble, so I watched it, was like, I don't want to do that. I'm gonna correct it. I'm
Right.
gonna correct my
Well,
behavior
when
and
you're part hermit, the correction is within
mhm,
and the challenge is within just as much as without. But you challenge your parents, you challenge your brothers, you challenge your teachers because you've got these logical opinions to back it up. The knower must know, the confusion must be assuaged, the stuckness has been overcome because suddenly gate 60 is designed to transcend. It just sucks that it takes so long sometimes. I have gate 60 as well. And it's like stuck. I'm
yeah.
stuck. And
Even
yet there's an insatiable force pouring out that must be shared, right? Collective,
mhm,
logical, and it's got an opinion. It's got one.
yeah.
It's emotionally charged, and its awareness must become deed in the now. So sometimes that turns you into, have you ever been just plain up fired from a job? I mean, you're young enough to maybe
Mhm.
that hasn't happened yet.
I've had very few jobs.
That's right. I was gonna say you've hardly had any. Yeah. I've only had
Uh,
like one or two jobs in my whole life now that I think of it. Um, that I
like
could be fired
four.
from. Yeah.
Yeah. I quit all of them. It
Same
was
here.
like the sacral energy of like, I can't force myself to do this anymore.
I quit every one of
Um,
them myself.
yeah.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yep.
that challenge of authority really came up when I started sharing human design and I started gaining traction with my offers and my business, where I'm still not certified in human design. I've just self-taught everything and just
We are the
obsessively
certification. We
learned.
got to get that
Yeah.
word certification out of our library, except as it
Yeah.
relates to helping others, because BS. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. But especially in the beginning when I was this, 21-year-old or 22-year-old, I don't know when originally started sharing it, young 20-year-old sharing human design and giving this information. And there was a lot of judgment and pushback, and even like some hate videos were put out there of just like people completely misinterpreting my story and making up a whole bunch of, she studied with this person, she got lucky because of this, and she knows these people. I'm like, I don't know where you read that, but if you asked me about it, I could have told you that none of that is true. So I felt like a little bit challenged for, am I doing the system harm by translating it into the manifestation world? That was a big conversation that
Mm,
in human design, manifestation, the concept of law of attraction is not grounded in human design. Like it's just not discussed. Manifestation as a mechanic is motorized energy moving to the throat. It's initiation. And so the human design community was like, some people in that world were very mad at me and challenged me and posted terrible things about me on the internet and said like, she's a red flag because she talks about manifestation and human design. But that was my individualized expression. Like gate 34, as the embodiment of manifesting generator power, it's like that's of course the journey that I was going through, and that's the language that I brought to
The
my
only time
business.
I know exactly what you mean. I would get challenged all the time. My starting cycle was a long time ago, 2000,
Mhm.
in the 2000s. So I was just looked at like a freak, like some woo woo. You know what I mean? Like whatever. It was hard for me to get traction in that way. I remember it was like a ghost town compared to now. You know what I mean? It really.
Yeah.
We were the early settlers, and there were settlers before even me. That's for dang sure. I'm guessing that this challenge, as it suits the purpose, starts to feel better and better and just pours out because I realize it's a fear of authority. It
Mhm.
is a fear of authority. Oh my God, oh my God. But it's connected to 58. Even afraid, you're still going. Dude, the energy is challenging, even when you don't say anything. Do people try to straighten up and fly right around you sometimes? Just curiosity. The aura comes into contact and suddenly they 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 brush off the crumbs on the table and they straighten things out or something. Do they try to straighten up and fly right in your presence
Yes.
sometimes? Okay.
There's also, I also notice it with that defined ego as well. There's this in a sixth line, there's a lot of projections of perfection, of,
Mhm.
oh, your house must be perfectly clean, everything must be perfectly organized. And so there can be like a projection or this like assumption that I'm judging them,
There
where really
is.
like you're just judging yourself based off of my energy. But like I will hear it a lot of, oh, you're probably judging me for my car being so messy, or like please don't judge me for this. And that came up a lot, even with I'm like the eldest daughter of, I have seven siblings. I have one older brother and then six younger siblings. But I moved out at 18 and moved several states away and kind of lost touch with several of my siblings. So when my grandfather got sick, I went back, and it had been a couple of years since I had talked to some of my siblings, and they had this story that I was super judgmental and I didn't want anything to do with them. And there was a lot of like, I have to tidy up, I have to do this. There's also some like seeking validation. So I will hear stories of like, oh, I before you got here, I did this and I did this, and it took me 10 hours to get this done, and I did this too, and I did this. And so there can be this like, look at all I did, look at all I did. Can you like, is it good enough? Is it good enough?
Mm,
And I see that more in like the defined ego of,
mm,
can you give me the approval? Can you tell me that I've done a good job? But as a gymnast, it was very,
right.
very detrimental of like, there's just projections of perfection. And
What
yeah,
they
that
do
can
to
be
those young
challenging.
girls, well, those young people, because it's boys and girls, it's
Mhm.
both. What they do is incredible. Men and women too. That pressure I watch gymnasts go through, most professional athletes, really.
Mhm.
You know, because there's no team sport in gymnastics. Essentially, you're on your own. I mean, unless you're Ringling Brothers and you're doing it with others, and certain right, certain aspects, but mostly. So these channels all work together. Getting to this last channel, this channel of community, it stands all by itself. This is so common because this channel is in
Mhm.
opposition. You have two of the three channels that sit in opposition to each other. That's a lot of
Yeah,
that's a lot of
it's the
guaranteed
cross of
definition.
duality.
Yep,
It,
it is
yeah.
duality, and I love the description of this particular duality where it's sort of obvious because the 34 is transitioning out. Same with the 26, it just turns into wisdom and basically a type 34 becomes patient-ish in line 6.
Ish.
You know, ish as much as one can do. Um, and then there's a hermit underneath that. And then there's the emotional tribal definition 4037 that wants to feed everyone, have community, needs its loyalty, has bargains, and you better keep them. You know what I mean? And there's stuff going on here and has the ego will to say so when needed. You know, I mean, you got
Mhm.
26 there too. So it's not like you can't broadcast, and it comes out with ego willpower causing people to want to compete with you and then want to get close to you and then want to compete with you and then want to get away from you. And then just depending on where that wave is without ever really coming to be aware of what is you. So you
Mhm.
run into your share of people, tell me if this is correct, in your life that would only brush up against you and did not know in any kind of way whom you were.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, my husband and I have this running joke. I'm 5'2", so I happen to be a good height where for a lot of average height adults, I'm like invisible. But we have this joke that like I'm invisible in crowds where people will accidentally step in front of me or like accidentally bump into me all the
Right.
time.
Mm.
And it's great. I love being in, like, I have a friend group where there's a girl who works at a coffee shop that I like to go to, and went out with her and some of her friends to a haunted house a couple of weeks ago. And like, nobody knew anything about me. I was just like one of the people in this group, we're just hanging out in line for a haunted house. And sometimes I'm like, none of you even know what human design is, but I'm kind of like a little mini celebrity in this little fun niche world over here, and it's really fun. So, but yeah, it's
That's
it's kind of fun, especially with an undefined G center, to like shapeshift and to be invisible and be like, yeah, I have this whole other secret life back there that you have no idea, but
so
I'm just gonna
you
be
have
here.
noticed in no uncertain terms, having this emotional definition, you've noticed it moves in a ratchet wave. It steps forward, it pulls back, it waits to see what support needs to be given. It never, almost never, won't actually support the thing that's needed, even when you're really mad at the person. It still sort of does at least the bare minimum because that's what tribalness demands. That's
Yeah.
survival. You know, you get the community still comes first, but it doesn't stop the blow up and the ultimate possible breakup or whatever or movement on. This duality moves on. It's almost like the cross of the plane in a way. It will
Right.
move on, but it doesn't want to, is the thing. It almost, this regret you were talking about earlier, I can see this regret very much manifesting out of the 34, the machismo, which you're still in technically. And there's even a little bully in there if I'm not, yeah, 34 1. It's all there. I got 34. I know what it's like. The 34 is a bully. It's just, it's always crashing its energy into things. So here you are contemplating the awareness of now, squirrel, knowing you need to slow down. And so this, I can see that's the duality. The duality is one side is just sort of in a way self-concerned and just outdoing the now thing with all its power. And the other thing is like, no, 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 there's this larger communal concern. There's food, there's loyalty, there's commitments, there's things we're doing. There's this ego will, there's we got to put our shoulder to the wheel thing. Loyalty is huge. Loyalty is huge. So this duality, one more listen, integration is about self-empowerment. So one, just
Mhm.
self-concerned, empowered in a way, because my now, not someone else's, it's yours. And the other, no, 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 group concern. But I can't tell if it's a group concern because it's the second line. And so let's wait till it's called out of me before I understand it. So what's that? Because you had to figure that out at some point in time. You had to figure out that you seem to go back and forth where people who didn't have that going on would either accuse you of things or exalt certain things. But it
Yeah.
was but it's the accusations that sort of hurt when we're younger and don't know what to do with it all, and so accuse you of things, paint you in a certain corner, like you're part of your family that had you
Mhm.
pigeonholed as a judgmental one. It's like, dude, it's not personal. It's not even my fault,
I'm
you
like, I'm
know?
the most accepting person you've ever met. What are you talking about?
Right. Harmony is part
Yeah.
of your way, you know? Sustained harmony is part of this way. So that's been a little odd at times, I imagine, just going back
Mhm.
and forth between, "No, no, no, I'm gone. I'm like the wind, baby. I'm on the move," and, "No, no, no, I planted roots. I'm here, and I'm staying." Has
Yeah.
this been torture or weirdness or cool? What's it? It's been all of it.
It's the chaos of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's all of that duality because there's a need for aloneness, but there's also a need for community and like bouncing energy off of other people. But there's some hyper independence, and then there's, some like a selfishness, but also this like really being, wanting to give to other people and serve other people. And then the collective circuitry around like, okay, if I do this, is that going to cause more harm than good? So a lot of it has been this like almost second guessing and like riding that emotional wave of like, okay, this is what I'm feeling. Is this just a me thing or is this like a collective thing? Because sometimes it's, oh, I'm feeling this thing, I call it out, and it is, yes, everyone is feeling this. This pattern is wrong. We need to change something. The collective system has to change, and it leads to a bigger change. And it starts with me being brave enough to say, hey, I don't think that this is the way that it should be. But other times it's not. Other times it is a me thing where it's not that the whole system of, let's say, like nursing school is incorrect. It's me. It's not that they're overworking absolutely everybody. It's that I am overworking myself, being in a career that I'm not happy with, and also trying to build the career that I'm happy with on the back burner.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I'm in
I
that
think,
transition myself right now. Like literally as
yeah.
we speak, I'm going through that. It's amazing process. But
Is
I've
it
just come to
me?
find
Is
out
it
that
everything?
yeah, well, I've just come to find out that manifesting generators, if they come to truly know this archetype of this 3420 is the design of survival. It's hard
Hmm.
to kill these people. Just go ahead and realize it doesn't matter really what you do, most, not totally, but a lot. It doesn't matter as long as you're awake to your nature. You're going to live well past 100. You can't stop. You just I don't even know. I can't tell I'm getting older. I mean, I can tell like my balance or whatever. Like I can't jump 5 feet and not expect to hurt my knees a little bit, when I
Hmm.
come landing on the ground. But if you send me flying and I have to land on the ground, I'm going to land fine. I'm going to shake it off,
Yeah.
with some ice and something or whatever. I can't tell that I'm mortal in that way. And that's what generators are. So they're so existential. They're supposed to be just right now.
Hmm.
Have you heard much about this trying to make a fifth type out of the manifesting generator? I mean, I've seen tons
Yes.
about it. I've seen tons
Yeah.
about it. What did
Mhm.
you think of that? If you care to say.
Yeah, I've seen manifesting generators as a spectrum, and I mean, we can get really meta with this. Of course, this is the 1762. I'm like, okay, let's look at the details here.
Hmm.
Raw didn't actually include type in the original versions of human design. And so it was really just wait and go. It's like taking action or waiting. And that was really the nuance that was there, was waiting and taking action. We are all a combination of all of the types. Like with a triple split, I wait for invitations. With
Right.
three projected channels, like I wait for invitations, and as a manifesting generator with the 3420, when I respond, it's also this initiation at the same time, and they're kind of blended together. There are other people whose designs are, let's say, like I think I talked earlier, if they have like a root and sacral energy, it's going to feel like a generator that responds with that sacral response and this emotional wave that's riding and sending them on this like emotional manifestor cycle as well. So they will be balancing the two different energetics. So I feel like it's really a hybrid, and I know we can get amazing information with strategy and authority, but I really love to just focus on like what are the conversations in the actual channels, because that is where the energy
That's
is
where it
moving, and
happens.
that's so much more specific
It
than
is. It
like
is.
the yeah,
I made it
human
simple
design
in my
is
life.
the
I
science
just
of differentiation.
Yeah, it is different, and you're going to differentiate wildly like a snowflake as soon as we dig into
Mhm.
the chart. Regardless, I've just found that a generator's generator, generator. If you have a sacral, you better surrender to that little Buddha that says you must
Mhm.
wait. So you are that screw that must back itself off half a turn and
Yeah.
wait. And so I've never chosen to actually allow that distinction to hit home with me, other than it's a huge distinction, as it relates to describing it. But you got that sacral, you're a generator, one of the four types, and the one of the
Yeah.
types just happens to have a two sort of little sections to it, is the way I put it. Um, and then these open centers. So we already talked about the open head center pulling in. Oh, now I know. Now I'm confused. Now I'm not confused. It's all intermittent. So when you first found this out as a right-minded being with that strategic view of yours, and it looks like fear would turn into need with all of that, and it looks like judgment is part of all of that as it relates to the
Mhm.
the tone and the color. Um, so I find this to be, if you're right-minded and you're pulling in this open head center, the whole world can seem against you at times as it relates to too much stuff and it's too confusing. And suddenly, who's the greatest quitters in the world? Generators, emotional or not, ego or not. You know what I mean? It's because our frustration grows because we've got into it wrong.
Mhm.
And I'd say that's only true because we're also the greatest population on the world, on the planet, as it relates to
Yeah.
numbers. So that alone, but open head center, thinking about things that don't matter and having it turn into something real. Actually, you covered that in your talk, didn't you? When you kept saying, no, no, that's yesterday. So this is the
Mhm.
wisdom of the open center talking, now that I think of it, when you were talking about all the stuff that's not right now. So as a wisdom center now, knowing that you tend to think about things that won't matter if you're not paying attention. What's that struggle been like? Was
Mm.
it a hurt to the ego to say, what do you mean I'm thinking about things that don't matter? I mean, that can, when I first heard things about myself, I was like, nah. I mean, day one, I remember I
Yeah.
was like, whatever, whatever. This is BS.
Yeah, it felt freeing actually of like, oh, thank God I don't have to figure this all out. It felt
Right,
like the pressure was actually released when I found out that I wasn't designed to come up with all of the answers and that they would appear for me when I needed them. And I just had like some examples of like a friend of mine told me about this new diet that she was going to start in this new workout plan. And in the back of my brain, I was like, oh, but like not based on your nutrition and I know the workouts and like I ended up thinking about her body type and I was in my mind just hours later still thinking about like what would the perfect workout and nutrition plan be for her and like should I write it up. I was like, wait, that doesn't even matter to me. Doesn't even matter to me. That's not relevant. Where would I like to redirect my attention? So, with an undefined head center, I know that I can think about anything. I can ask a million questions. I can search for inspiration everywhere, and ideas love me. My job is to filter through all of that abundance of inspiration that I am open to using my design. And so, the ideas that are meant for me will be the ones that really light me up and I trust that the inspiration comes to me. And now I say, I trust my interest. Like I trust my mind to be interested in things that are intended to me. I trust that
right,
if it's interesting, if it's capturing my attention, it's capturing my attention for a reason. There's something there for me. And
right.
so I get to, anytime I'm maybe scrolling, instead of saying, oh, you shouldn't be scrolling, you're doing something bad, whatever, you're taking in too much inspiration. I say, okay, check in with my body like, is there inspiration here for me? I'm interested in staying here for a few more minutes. There must be something here for me. I'll give myself a few more minutes. And then when the urge hits, I know that I'll be done and I will move on to the next thing.
It's
So,
about
yeah.
not feeling bad about any of it is the thing. I totally get all that. This sacral generative power that we have really does come pouring out. I've always told generators, and tell me if this resonates with you, you can make it even simpler. Does it feel good or not? Right? Do you find that you have the energy for it or not? And can you see in your life that there's a spectrum of energy where sometimes you're full on, can't be stopped? Other times you're three quarters. You don't necessarily, you got some you don't feel like it, but you're doing it anyways. But it's not lighting you up. You got that half speed down to one quarter speed power where it's like you really don't want to be there, but there's some obligation and you got to finish to schlep the stupid thing across the street. Now you're mad at it, even. We don't want to be there. And all the way down to zero energy. And if people can start to tune into, hey, I'm doing this thing, but I'm at my job, but every time I wake up in the morning, I don't have a lot of energy to get there. I have to force it. Yeah, not for you. You don't even need to understand strategy and authority in that moment just to understand. I mean, you'll understand it, but just to understand that as the energy goes down, the 4-year-old is telling you, not true. It's not true for me. You're a liar if you keep doing it, by the way. And if you convince yourself you're any good at it, you're an extra liar. That this is somehow for you and you're going to do this forever and be happy, satisfied. So the generator I've found needs to come to terms with that outside of our responsive nature, we're liars. If you're not a responder, you're a liar, and a little one, not a big liar. I don't like the way that sounds, but I'm talking about internally, little
Mhm.
nuggets of it, and that the level of energy that is there that you wanna or don't wanna, whatever the thing is your indicator that sacral gave you permission or that mind has been overriding sacral without having to go through, was that because when generators first come into it, was that a response or was that my mind? Right? That's the first thing we get to. Well, you can corroborate that now if you just go back to, am I happy doing it? Is there a lot of energy? Do I got lots of energy to do this? Well, but I have to get it done. Right. Not true. You don't like it. Not for you. Start to move away. You know what I mean? Even though you have to do it. I get you have to do it. You got to pay your mortgage next month. I get that part, but you got to start moving away now because it's not true. Not
Mhm.
true. So have you found it that simple now that you're 7 or so years later into this experiment?
Yeah, I keep coming back to like simplifying it. And I always just come back to like my favorite phrase is reckless self-trust. And so
What
I
did it
just
say it again?
reckless self-trust. So I
Okay,
trust myself recklessly. And I came up
me
with that
too.
when I quit my
Yeah.
nursing job. Like I decided to leave my nursing job and then left it the next day. And I'd been a registered nurse for 6 weeks. So I basically threw away a career, but it was I mean, that was 4 years ago, and I'm exactly where I need to be, but it
That's too
felt
funny. You
reckless.
threw away career. No, I found myself.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Um, I forgot what I was saying, but oh yeah, yeah. The like the frustration, not frustration. I did forget what I
Yeah.
was gonna say. So, anyways, I
Sorry
must
about
have
that.
said
I
it.
took you off. I got too excited. Yeah, 'cause I've heard that so many times in my life. Now this open G center, um, you got these 2 activations off of it, right? So one of
Mhm.
them, are these both unconscious? The colors aren't totally
1 is
25 is conscious
conscious, 1 is unconscious.
and 6 is it's not 46 isn't double. Yeah, so that's just strictly unconscious. So the 46 wouldn't have stood out as much. Oh, you have a love of being in your body. Well, intermittently, maybe it's unconscious. So the fact that it's there, see, this is the trip. The unconscious things sitting on open centers are vexing. Vexing is a sort of older word, but that they can be troublesome because it's there, but you can't tell because it shows up out of a tunnel and you're always trying to make sense of something like that. How do you make sense of that? You can't really tell. So you found a way to love your body naturally, is what I heard, because you stayed active. This is the
Yeah.
love of the body, is the active. In the activity, where are we? We're planted in the net. When you're running down the street, you might have some stuff going on about things, but you're also planted right now because you got to be, because you're in that movement. So that's all 46 asks for. It's like, come with me right now. Come be now and ditch expectations because this is part of that abstract, emotional awareness circuitry. And so it can get caught up with expectation and then lose track of. So you have waffled between, even though you don't have a gate 35, you still got a 36. So all this crisis would show up. I'm no, I can't tell. I'm uncertain. I'm inexperienced. I don't know. Well, and then that could easily take you out of your body, where you couldn't quite tell what to do. But then 25 comes along and it just is a serene type of innocence, except that its melancholy is I'm insignificant. You only got four individual gates. I counted at one, two, three, four.
Mhm.
Well, 34 and 20, but it's because they're a channel. I get they count as melancholy, so never mind.
Yeah.
So 6 gates of melancholy, totally. What am I saying? But but the 25 would have stood out because when it showed up, it would show up rather profoundly. Who am I? I'm insignificant. Why am I even this? And it goes so counter to the fact that you must share your opinions. You are significant. It's like, oops. As a G center and this whole looking for love and direction, I never really liked that keynote very much, but it's true. And the love is the love of ourself and the love of the beauty that is supposed to be. And the direction is towards the communion and the fulfillment of the spirit, not just the spirit of the self, but the 55, well, 55 spirit generally. That's the spirit of all of humanity. And
Mhm.
25 is very much the innocence of all of humanity, but it is the spirit of the self. So it's right across the way from gate 10. So 25 and 10 end up working together to where they love itself or it doesn't. Have you recognized a certain innocence that allows you to basically walk through issues unscathed? When you quit that job after 6 weeks, people may have told you a bunch of stuff, but you walked scot free, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Oh, I did
all the
have to
baggage.
pay
Oh
I
yeah,
did
what?
have to pay like $4,000 to get out of my contract that I signed.
Oh, oh, well, that's easy. That was still not a hard decision. You walked scot-free of lifestyle consequences is what I'm looking at,
Mhm.
not a money purchase. I get it. That hurt. No, I get it. That's not the best thing at all, but, um, I mean, they were paying you anyway, so you probably just gave them back their own money.
Yeah.
That's funny now that I think of it. Here you go. Um, what have you made of that whole looking for love and direction? Because in a triple split, the natural tendency and the not self-conditioned part of our life is to really blame the other and look into others. and sort of have this finger pointing way that you could have easily taken this judgmentation of 58, 7, 18 and not realized it's not personal. You could have taken that personal over and over again with an open G center that's starting to get annoyed at people not showing you the way, yet they kept showing up over and over again to give you directions. Open G center people get directions all the time, all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was that like? Was that too
Um,
much question, or can you
no, yeah, I can answer it. It led to a feeling of disconnection and it kind of fed into like the 58 shadow of disappointment and
Mhm,
like dissatisfaction, where I would because with the undefined G center, you see the potential of who you think people could be. So there was a lot of pedestaling, especially with 18, with like a fear and respect of authority.
mhm.
So I put a lot of like coaches and experts like on a pedestal, and then of course with that like insignificance, like I am nothing and like your opinion means everything. And then it led to almost like when my, I don't know, heroes, I guess, didn't meet my expectations, I was like, oh, and it kind of fizzled. And so then I felt like, oh, they're lying. And then it was blaming of like, they aren't who they said that were. They're a bad person. And it could be very judgmental and
Yeah, and
accusatory.
suddenly you're taking that into yourself
Yeah.
as if
Mhm.
it's really you, and it's not just this impersonal thing that needs to be shared one way or another, or not. By the way, 58, 18 becomes a pro at finding the timing. Just because you notice it doesn't mean you need to say it, because that energy is powerful coming out of you. So you learn that lesson somewhere along the way. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. There's a right time for
Was it was it
everything.
a process of tongue biting when you were first learning the skill? Like what, like when we first learn to walk and we fall down a lot, you gotta
Even
bite your tongue.
today, yeah, with the something I actively work on is not talking over people because sometimes with that 34, it just responds so quickly, and that 62, it like wants to just explain all of the details. And growing up with seven siblings, you kind of had to talk over somebody if you wanted to be heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's shown up there. It was like I'm trying to like, it's I know the answer, but it's not the right time. And also learning to tap into like the capacity of other people. Because just because I have the energy to say it doesn't mean they have the capacity to receive it. And so, yes, I could talk about human design for 4 hours straight on a masterclass and not even need a sip of water. But if I'm talking about emotional processing and like the really heavy, deep, beautiful themes that we're talking about, if somebody is brand new and most of what they're receiving in that conversation is new, they're not going, like their eyes are going to be glazed over at about a quarter of the way through. So I've
That
learned
was
a
my
lot
first.
about timing and
Oh,
pacing.
my first
Mhm.
10 years in this whole thing were glazed over eyes. Just try to imagine being me. Luckily, I was called, you know what I mean? And but it was like they just glaze over. And I
Mhm.
remember two aligns with hope. Even though my motivation is desire, your motivation is
Fear.
intelligence. Well, fear drives
Yeah.
intelligence. And so the gathering of intelligence was just fearful when you don't have the intelligence yet. So
Mhm.
that's you, foundational stuff. And mine was desire, so I couldn't stop trying to get to the next person. But hope, second lines resonate to hope because
Mhm.
hope is the second color. Have you noticed that in your life? It's like you could
Yeah.
just suddenly then knock down, never mind your third line theme, never mind the sacral sustains. Sooner or later, through the melancholy comes back the hope. And the hope is a persistent theme. And with six line, that goes along with optimism. So it's hope and
It does.
optimism. It's a little double whammy of pick me up.
Yeah. I will somehow still always see a silver lining, even when everything just looks gray. I'm like, no, it's silver. Everything is silver. Look.
Absolutely. Me too. I'm down with that very much
Yeah.
so. Yep. And so,
Worst case scenario, at least this is temporary.
right, something will give. That's a big famous saying. Don't worry, something's going to happen. Something will give. Something will happen. I, hope is a yang energy. It's not a yin
Mhm.
energy. It is yang. It's a yang line. Second lines are yang. Second four, two, four, and six, and it's a yang energy. Hope is an active principle. It's one active moving principle. And I mean, I love how they described it in the Matrix, you know? It's like this quintessential thing, hope. And that guy was all mad about it. And I'm like, I know why you're mad about it, because it's ruining your day. You know what I mean? Um, so when I add in all of this stuff and I look at this open G center, and you've already looked at it plenty of times, the feeling of being lost would in you suddenly start to get replaced with, I'm always able to tell where I am. Is that true?
Mhm. Yeah, I see it as
Especially when
I
I'm not in
always
the right
know who I
place.
need to be. Yeah, like I'm always in the right place. I'm always exactly where I need to be. And also this like, especially
Or
with
you're,
the 34
or you're
20,
moving
like
out,
how,
or you're moving
yeah,
away quickly.
yeah.
So these things now show up without you feeling guilt about that movement, or self-conscious, or, that kind of thing. Is that true?
Yeah. Like,
So,
no,
yeah,
if it's not right for me, it's not right for me. And if you don't understand that, I don't owe you an explanation.
right, right. Although if you ask, I'll probably respond and tell you.
Yeah, I will explain it in excruciating detail.
Excruciating. I'm gonna
Please
hurt you.
ask me for my opinion. I'd
Please,
love to
but I'm gonna
explain.
hurt you. I'm gonna hurt you so bad with all the details. I totally get what you're. I'm gonna hurt you. You ready? I have that whole channel 6447. So it's doing a different process, but it
Mhm.
never shuts off, ever. And so when I think about things that don't matter, it turned out that it didn't not matter. Apparently I needed to go through that energetic process of pressure because it was showing me something I needed to whatever. Um, but when I put these open centers together, have you done this for yourself? When you keynote for people, do you stack up the open centers and keynote it all together?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, I find that to be, I always come back and sort of just try and do that. And so, in the not self craziness of this busyness, that's a dualistic creature, all by itself could be called bipolar and or schizophrenic in a way. Um, Before I get to that, re- you were too many siblings, so they might not have been able to pay attention, but in the world you grew up in, it would have been common for you to start receiving diagnoses
Mhm.
with a chart like this. Did you?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, anxiety, and severe depression when I was like 16, 17, right after like career-ending shoulder injury from gymnastics. And my dad was diagnosed with bipolar, and like there's some mental health themes that have followed through the family. So yeah, there was always this like maybe I'm bipolar as well, especially with like
Yeah.
everything in
So,
my
like
chart.
you were saying in your demonstration, those just become excuses to identify in a way that's who you're
Mhm.
not, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, I can't wait till we get about the business of scrubbing away these diagnoses and replacing them with actual conscious aware things that make more sense for people. I
Mhm.
can't wait. They're going to fight us tooth and nail. There's a
Yeah,
lot of,
some people will.
well, the industry itself will do its thing. But when I stack these up, I find that if you were a first reading, you would totally identify with this. Now you're just going to remember it, but it's busy being confused and wondering if there's too much noise about the knowing you're doing. Are you going to turn out to be significant? Are you going to find yourself in the right place? You start thinking about things that don't matter regarding the love and affection that you think and direction that you think you're chasing, but always seems elusive to you. And none of that would be you. Um, that's how those two open centers stack up,
Mm.
ultimately, and they become a giant brainstorm. It's all in the mind, right? Haven't God, when you read for new people, then you can see the journey that they're on. It feels like shepherding is what it feels like. It feels like a
Yeah.
great honor, and I can't wait to watch people wake up. I'm still jazzed to this day. As soon as they're starting to get it, suddenly I'm going 2 hours and long on every call. You know what I mean? You said 20 and 30 minutes or 15 and 20, and I'm like, wow, I got it's a skill I must learn.
Oh, that was just in the beginning when I saw that there was like hundreds that I had to do.
Oh, right. Yeah. So
Once I got into sessions and I really started really understanding the material, they were like
well,
2, 3 hours.
ultimately, what I love about this, actually, one more comment about the 3420. Have you noticed that it is so fast, the 3420? You had mentioned it already about busting in, timing, and all that stuff. Um, there's two things. It's on the surface. that power and
Mhm.
that wisdom in the second lines, they float on the surface. Their natural talents aren't quite deep yet. They have to go through a process to deepen that up. They're just talented on the surface. And that can sound almost like an insult. So, A, just because your awareness and everything said it in the now, that was correct. But I've noticed there's a healthy aspect where I'll say, but that doesn't mean I'm right.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I'm correct. It doesn't mean it's correct for sure. And I hate saying it because at the time I'm so sure I'm right. I don't want to give them that information, but I have to say it. It's like a disclaimer. It doesn't mean I'm right.
Mhm.
And the second thing is 3420, the timing of finishing the other sentence because they're going too slow. Well, I was thinking about, yeah, I know. You want to go out to dinner, right? It's like, well, I was hoping to finish my sentence, Dan. Oh, sorry. Right? Do you do that? Or have you found I still do it to this day. I did it with you a
Still.
couple of times, and you've done it here a time or two, I think.
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier that that's like one of the things that I still consciously work on every once in a while is I notice my brain will just automatically fill in the end of your sentence and I have a response to it. And you're, especially if someone's like searching for a
Oh
word
my
or
God, I fill
anything
in
like
their
that, I'm
words
like,
from all the time. You and I are
I'm
the
like,
word
here it is,
providers.
here it
Oh,
is, here it is.
here you go. Hurry, hurry, come on, honey, you can go
Yeah.
faster,
Like, did you
right?
mean this? Did you mean this? Did you mean this? I'm just like an encyclopedia with my synonyms.
Well, this brings us in perfect alignment to the last thing, these variables. I'm just going to stick with the right-mindedness mostly, for at least just because this is the emblem that we all need to get to. The right-minded being like you, me, Moana, we're growing in numbers. I don't know if you've noticed, but read back over your charts, and if you put them from 7 years ago through to now, you'll notice that a slight tick up of ratio. It's not 50-50 anymore. It's turning 53-47, or I'm not sure what the number is. I should go look myself more, but we're becoming more right-minded because that's where humanity is headed ultimately. Now, in this rightness is the endless ocean of everything. That is a magical place. That's why I wrote down right-minded methods of magic. You said methods of magic, and I added the right-minded. Um, have you just noticed that the place wants to be so strategic and figure it out? And as soon as it's a perfect arrow for a generator. It's a perfect arrow for a generator. Yet in our world as it is right now, if that strategic arrow is not present anywhere, we really won't get enough done. Egos aside, you know what I mean? We just something
Mhm.
there'll be an endless morass of possibility essentially, you know, without the rest of it, the strategicness having honed us into a spot. And I found it easy to describe to people who are right-minded, and I found it a little more difficult to explain to people who have a left arrow there. But your variables are almost all right, except for that view, which sees the want. I see the want, and it's got that beautiful, first tone underneath it. So the first tone demands foundations of want, and above it, I love this variable combination, you know what I'm saying? And it fits into your design. So when I look at this right arrow and a sharp view that looks at want, so you see the want, you see it, and that want transfers. It transfers to all the other colors, just like the fourth line, fourth color in the personality would of need. These things transfer. And at the same time, it doesn't matter what they transfer because the rightness in you always has the answer when oriented in response. Did you have to study the tests? You found out you didn't. I heard you describe it earlier. When you started to get less nervous about tests, you realized, oh no, if I just pour through the material, I did fine. Is that true?
Mhm. Yeah, I started studying a lot less, and I almost started writing my notes as if a friend missed class and I was teaching them. So really embodying that sixth line, almost like teacher archetype, also helped me to remember it better. But yeah.
At this point in time, I trust my rightness so implicitly that I found it recovers portions of books, sayings, sentences, technical aspects, your chart. I've been looking at what Moni sent me, but I kept realizing I didn't really have to look at it um, because it was already there. It went in. It kept going in, and I realized I could almost recite it until I started looking at it. So what would you say? I know what I would say the biggest fallback and thing that you have to recognize about about rightness generally is don't treat it like it can do something for you.
Mm,
Don't treat it like it can even do anything. Don't treat it. You know what I mean? Stay away from it in a way. Just know it's there all the time and revel in her glory. It's like a freaking oracle.
yeah,
It's
it
like,
really
and
is.
it's an oracle, and it never runs out of the stuff that's in there. As soon as the response is there, as soon as
Mhm.
that responsive generator is manifesting in its responsive state, you know, is that your experience of this rightness that you have?
Yeah, I love being asked questions where I don't consciously know the answer because a lot of times I find an answer that I didn't even realize I knew. And so it's like through questions and through teaching, I actually learned more from myself, and it's so cool. I love it. Like
It,
I recently taught a program on the variables and somebody asked a certain question and I connected dots between like second colors and second tones and just made a connection like this theme of open and closed. It shows up in markets as well. And it was just this thing. And I was like, oh yeah, whoa, that's so cool. As I'm like saying this and teaching this, I'm like, that's so fun. There's this connection there, but I also like prepare to get to that point instead of like I'm not just going to show up to a call with no slides and say like I don't know, whatever is going to come through comes through. Sometimes in the right context there's like a Q&A call or something like that, but
sure.
yeah,
We
it
jot
is.
stuff down when it gets super specific, but then the looking at it doesn't always even happen.
Mm,
Just the fact of jotting it down put it there, and it took away our fear, right? Fear's intelligence
yeah.
making. I say let your fears roll through. Let them roll through. They're gonna you don't have a choice anyways.
Mhm.
Let them move through just like in meditation where thoughts move through and you let them move through and pass out and stay in that trance-like state. Same thing with fear. You stay in your awake state. You can be totally awake. And what is awake? Beta or theta? What's the brainwave that's alpha or something is
I
totally
thought it was
awake?
alpha.
Okay, something you stay in that alpha state, whatever it is, totally awake, you know what I mean? And just let that stuff happen. It just keeps happening. And as soon as you're not sure, the guy who lost his password to his crypto wallet, if he was right-minded and we could teach him his design, you know what I mean? Somebody had like $1 billion crypto wallet, but they can't find their password. So that's it. They can't have it. That money will never get
Mhm.
any. It's a story. I don't know if it's true. I imagine it is. And if that person were right-minded, it would come we could potentially get in there and fish it out, except when he tries.
Mhm.
It's so have you noticed the trying is what disorganizes it? The lack of trying is what enriches it. That's not strategic, dude. That's the opposite of strategery.
That one is quite the conundrum and just it's yeah, counterintuitive sometimes because it's crazy because it's like you're thinking of something like, I know this word, it's on the tip of my tongue, I know this, I know this, I know this, and you can't think of it to save your life. And that's why like I wasn't testing well in in
Right,
college. Is
right.
I was strategically trying to search, like, I know this, I know this, I know this. Where is the answer? I know the answer. And that like searching, it's like the walls close. It's like, nope, nothing here. The ink just disappears. But if somebody else asks me, or if I move past it, I really got good at moving past questions if the answer didn't appear like first few minutes or
Yeah.
first few seconds, I would move on. And a lot of times, like 5 or 6 questions later, all of a sudden I'd be like, ding, like, oh, that's right, that's the answer. I could
It
go back
shows up.
and
The
put it in.
rightness
Mhm.
acts very much like a pulse. And as humanity turns more right, our open receptivity towards the communion we're supposed to have with others will finally ignite the 55th spirit of it all, and the spirit of ourself will go. And then humanity's main keynote will be able to finally take place. You know how there's these overarching keynotes that are like the primary keynote for even a body graph or this
Mhm.
circuitry or this or that. There's an overarching keynote just for the human experience, and I've always found it amazing. I'm not sure why it never really got taught, but it's keeps standing there. It goes from 55, and it goes up through 2, 1, 8, and basically you can end it there. and it lands at the contribution of our community with the other, our communion with the other. It's
Mm.
the spirit of humanity that must drive a direction towards beauty, leading to greater communion as contributed through Gate 8. And if you just keep that in mind, you see the movement of where humanity's trying to get to. And it's just this amazing place. And in our rightness, I can't help but to think Albert Einstein was right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to pull his chart. Maybe he wasn't.
Either.
Something about him just pulls the rightness, pulls the thing. Leftness knows to do something with it. And these two things
Mhm.
cooperate. And one isn't better than the other. It's just that they must cooperate until we've finally done all the things we need to do so that when we turn all right, it won't matter. It'll be like Eden again, is what we're looking for, as long as we can, stop everyone from killing everyone else.
That part.
That part. Oops, that part. Yeah, that part. So when just to wrap this all up, if you were brand new and I was keynoting your chart altogether, I would say here's a person loaded down with details. They know they have details. They have to learn the timing to share. It's hard to learn because they're so dang fast, but the sensitivity through the supportiveness of the emotional definition will guarantee they will learn it if they want to. And then the timing will show up and the emotional wave will give the clarity. And then they'll suddenly know exactly what prophetic articulations to make in the now. And guess what? It'll be loaded with details and it'll drive a direction towards something logical in the other with a great
Mhm.
deal of joy. And that's what you're supposed to be doing out in the public.
Yeah. Yeah.
What crisis?
Yeah. The duality of the situation.
The duality of it all.
There's the events all over the place where we got to meet I got to meet a lot of different analysts, speaking at the International Human Design Conference, and
Yeah.
it was like there was a bigger audience than I thought there would be. So
Wow.
there is a lot of interest. I think it's increasing for sure.
I'm still pissed that I had to grow up in human design in a ghost town. You know what I'm saying? It's like, come on, I want those years back. I don't get to have them, of course, but this whole thing was so
It's a fun
I
one.
feel I feel pretty complete. How about you, Eden?
Good. Yeah, I'm feeling very complete. This was so good. It was a beautiful reflection. I've only actually received like a handful of human design chart readings, so it's always fun to like, oh yeah, I did get that right.
Yes, to receive and see what is it you had and
Yeah.
didn't have. That was my
Yeah.
my learning went that way too. It's amazing. So
Thank you so
much humbled,
much.
much appreciated, Eden. I love this.
You can hang out with me on Instagram primarily at I am Eden Carpenter. My website is also my name, so it's super easy to find.